So let's go over your prep. I saw a post from you. You said that the prep this time around was more challenging than the previous one.
Yeah, so it started with, and I know you want to talk about this too, but basically all off season, last off season, I was hungry the whole time.
Really?
It was tolerable, but I was never reached that point that people talk about in their bulks or off seasons where, you're just if eating food is just a nuisance, right? Like it takes you 40 minutes to get a meal down. You feel full all day. I never reached that point. I just kind of started getting there a little, like in my coach's last update around like Christmas time
Hmm.
for about 4 weeks. But then the pre-prep hold phase where we drop food like a little bit before starting prep, I was already hungrier. So then like right at the beginning of prep, I'm like already hunger is already a problem. So
Hmm.
that kind of made it rougher is starting immediately hungry from the beginning, especially because I'm 18 weeks out and I'm like, oh, I gotta feel like this and worse for 18 weeks. So kind of a rough start from that perspective. And also I was losing strength. I started losing strength almost immediately, partly because I was running the same basically training program with all the same
Hmm.
machines and stuff, all pretty much all off season.
Yeah.
When I switched to a new gym, and then my strength was going up on the new exercises and machines I chose. But then starting at probably 8 weeks out, it was just strength just went down like crazy to the point where um, I'm and on the third week, yeah, I'm 2 weeks into my rebound now, and like I'm literally I'm doubling the weight I'm doing on stuff. That's how much
Yeah.
strength I lost. Like,
That's crazy. So if I remember correctly, the previous bulk, the one before your first show, you were feeling full, like you were kind of forcing the food down
oh
you.
yeah, it was brutal.
What
Yeah,
do you think? Why do you think you were so much more hungry? Were the calories the same in the previous bulk, the one that you just did?
I don't know for sure because actually I like that my coach does this. He doesn't show me how many calories I'm consuming, and of
Oh,
course,
so you're just going off quantities of foods.
yeah, of course I could put it in my fitness pal, but I think it was probably the same, if not maybe a little more.
Hmm.
So the difference I think comes down to the post-show rebound and just that insulin sensitivity I gained probably, and my coach said this. He did a really good because he has a podcast. He did a rebound video before my first show last year, and it was really good. Just everything you need to know about the rebound. And I watched that, and my coach said uh, you can make up to like 70% of the progress that you'll make all off season, 4 to 12 weeks post show. So
Yeah.
my rebound was 8 weeks, and he proved himself right.
I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about your rebound because you you blew up. It was crazy watching that happen. Um, but so why do you think the hunger, you think the hunger from this previous off season was attributed to the cut prior? You think that kind of led into that or
Yeah, yeah. So I think, the main reason a rebound works well is because your muscle insulin sensitivity is high.
yeah.
So I gained a lot of muscle and yeah, so you're hungry in the rebound, like I'm in one right now, and I'm almost just as hungry as I was in prep.
Mm.
And then you just got to make sure you treat it like prep. And there's actually a lot of elements to it, but yeah, you treat the rebound like prep, treat the whole off season like prep. I ate way less cheat meals than before, and those I think things like that will slowly chip away at your insulin sensitivity. And I think
Mm.
that term I keep using, insulin sensitivity, that's the difference maker, right? So as soon as you start putting on too much body fat, that's when it starts getting to the point where you have to force feed. You're probably gaining a lot more fat than muscle. I think at a certain point, in a bulk, you get fat enough, it's probably just all fat and like bloat,
Right.
inflammation, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know none of this stuff is like in the science community, people say none of this stuff exists, but from what I've seen and experienced now, I think it absolutely does. The leaner you are, the better you'll build muscle.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at it as from a perspective, my views of muscle growth have changed over the last couple of years. It's not so much energy. It's not so much an energy based system. It's a signaling based system.
Mhm.
So, yeah, arbitrarily increasing calories just for the sake of increasing calories doesn't quite make sense. But if we can leverage insulin sensitivity or GLUT4 receptor uptake, then that gives us an upper hand. And I think that's why the post show rebound shows you, like you said, you make 70% of your gains within that rebound because you're hyper sensitive in that
Mhm.
period of time. Would you agree with that or?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There
Um,
was oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's other factors that go into it as well, like uh nutrient timing is something that we leaned further into. So like I always eat less calories, mainly less carbs on my rest days. Meal timing around my training. Like when I first started my first off season, it was just I just had one diet day for both rest days and training days.
Yeah.
In my first off season, my step count goal was 10,000, and a lot of days I did not hit it.
Hmm.
In my second off season, my step count goal was 12,000, and I hit it every single day without fail. If you, I could show you the sheet where I log it every day. It's above 12,000 with yeah, without fail. I was doing a lot of those walks is why my coach put this in my plan. 12K steps made up of short walks post meal. I know you're a big fan of that. So I wasn't, I was doing maybe like 3 out of 6 of my meals. Then toward the end of the off season, 4 to 6, because I wouldn't do it pre-workout and I wouldn't do it before bed, but I did that religiously as well.
Hmm.
So that was a big difference maker. Cardio, I wasn't doing as much in my first off season. The start of the off season, I wasn't doing any. The second off season where I stayed lean, I was doing 20 minutes of stairs, fasted every 4 days a week. So we have that in as well for this rebound. And then otherwise, again, treating the everything like prep. And when it comes to diet, like in my first off season, I was doing 2 off-plan meals per week. And then in my second off season, my coach just didn't prescribe them. So I'd just do one maybe every 2 or 3 weeks.
Hmm.
So off the top of my head, that's a whole list of things I can think of that sound like small things that wouldn't make much of a difference that I think also did make a really big difference.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of points that I've been speculative of that it hasn't really shown in the data, but in anecdotes, it kind of shows up that like staying overall active throughout the day, as opposed to like bouts of conditioning or cardio, tend to keep you leaner when the calories are higher. So that kind of sounds like what you've been doing. Yeah, your steps were higher, like 12K, but you were just overall more active throughout the day as well.
Mhm.
Um, you think that's why you stayed so? Because I mean, in your bulk, dude, you had striations all the way through your bulk, like peak bulk. You had striations and veins crawling up your abs. Like, do you
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
attributed to that?
some faint ones. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I think I always used to be kind of against the idea of how important you know controlling blood sugar and insulin is, but I think that's kind of what it comes down to is like because I think that's what the merit of doing a walk post meal is, right?
Yeah.
Or like as you just put it, just being more active throughout the course of the day is it helps regulate your blood sugar, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, that's probably it. Like I think, you know, um, people talk about anecdotes like there's like they don't hold much weight, but when it's you and you track everything religiously for year over year like we do, it's kind of hard to it's hard not to look at something that you've experienced and say and say hey, this doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I have to disagree with people who say that anecdotes don't make for good evidence. I think they do. That obviously there's stronger evidence out there like empirical data, but I do believe like especially in the world of bodybuilding, the anecdotes hold weight. Especially when it comes to like people. I think the anecdotes, especially in bodybuilding, hold weight because bodybuilders in particular are very data driven. They track everything, and so I think it makes those anecdotes that much more credible.
Yeah. And in
So
bodybuilding, there's no science on bodybuilders.
no,
So that's just all the science we have is the decades of tons and tons of anecdotes from bodybuilders.
yeah. So go with that. I mean, I can't remember which exercise scientist said this, but like he said that sports science is always going to be 10 years behind what's actually happening in the real world. Like a lot of the training techniques that were used in the 90s just now are starting to show and not just now we're starting to get like evidence behind them on
Mhm.
paper in the literature that they work, but it's been working. I remember in Olympic weightlifting, like the Russians were doing this crazy technique to get their weightlifters to become Olympians, like gold medalists. But the science wasn't there, but they were clearly doing something that was working. And
Mhm.
then 15 years later, the scientists in America proved what they were doing was actually working, and there was a reason why.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um,
Yeah, that seems to be what it is like they're just trying to figure out like we know what works already
yeah,
largely.
yeah,
So the science comes down to like they're just trying to figure out why.
yeah. The what's the why behind it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so there's been this debate going on in the zeitgeist. I don't know how much you're paying attention, but essentially bulking is dead. Like bulking is useless. Bulking doesn't really build muscle. But I've got a couple speculations of why I still think it works. I'm not completely ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I see people like you and other bodybuilders who they're clearly in a caloric surplus and they're clearly adding tissue to their frame.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering again, kind of circling back to what we just talked about. I don't think it's so much the surplus that's doing it. I think it's the leveraging the insulin sensitivity and providing the nutrients during those insulin sensitive periods. So I was thinking back a lot to your first bulk before you got ready for your first show. You clearly had a lot more body fat, and you were clearly like you didn't look the same way that you looked previous.
Mhm.
You did your show, your first show. You went through your rebound. You ballooned up like crazy, and then you looked great going into your second show. Did your coach anticipate you getting to like that level of fatness in the first bulk and then anticipated all this happening, or like what was do you know what I'm going with here?
Yeah, well, I described it earlier kind of like we did it the wrong way and it didn't go well, but that's not
Mm,
really the case. There's a lot of things we could have done better, probably. When you compare it to the second off season, the second bulk. But at the same time, I went from 160 pounds to 130 pounds in 9 months. So
230 pounds.
that was a successful bulk. Um, and yeah, because I had a lot of weight to gain to be competitive because that was like my first bulk as someone who is committed to doing a show and getting into bodybuilding
Mm,
competitively. So I had a lot of size to put on. So just because insulin sensitivity goes down, you start putting fluff on, doesn't mean you shouldn't do big bulks like that where you do get pretty fluffy
mm,
within reason. Like I didn't have accumulation of body fat in certain areas. I didn't have love handles. When I did my poses, my waist looked tight. So yeah, no, like when it comes to the argument, bulks are dead, I think personally, I'm not as careful about my wording as you are. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Uh,
mm.
no one who doesn't do a bulk like that is ever going to get. If anyone with that mindset that doing a big bulk like that isn't a great way to put on a lot of muscle, is never going to get big because it's really the only
Mm.
way to get big. You'll hear every bodybuilder say this, like everyone has to do at least one of those big bulks where you get kind of sloppy.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question was do you think that like everybody should go through like one of those really nasty big bulks?
Yeah, I think if you want to get big, you want to put on a significant amount of muscle, then yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that is?
Um, that's a good question. Well, I mean,
I can think of a few reasons, but I'd like to hear yours.
uh, I mean, well, when it comes to building muscle, honestly, like the main thing is training performance. Like if you go from being able to squat, I don't know, let's say 225 pounds for 6 reps to 405 for 6 reps, your legs are going to be way more muscular.
Sure.
And I think yeah, I'd say that's probably the main mechanism to where the muscle growth is coming from. So if you eat 5,000 to 7,000 calories per day and you don't lift, you're going to get super fat. So the difference maker is the training performance. And when you're your biggest, your heaviest, you're always going to be your strongest.
Mm.
So as long as you're making sure that pushing your body weight up that high is translating into significant, not significant, but just consistent long-term increases in your training performance, so your strength going up in the gym. I think that's the main reason, I'd say.
Yeah. Do you think now, elephant in the room, do you think that the sports supplement side of things, do you think that plays a role into the effectiveness of a bulk?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Do you think that like natural individuals would benefit from still like natural individuals benefit from something like that? Or do you think because they don't have the leverage of additional anabolics, it wouldn't be as fruitful?
Yeah, the exact same principles apply. The only difference is the potential, right?
Hmm.
So if you're doing a bulk like that, again, you're allowing yourself to get more fluffy than you're comfortable with, but you should also be paying attention to the data. And when I say data, like the most important thing is your photos.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't want to get to the point like I mentioned earlier. The term I used was like you don't want to be seeing fat accumulate in like specific areas of your body, love handles, stuff like that. Um, like beyond reason, right? And once it stops, that would be probably the best way to gauge it is once it stops translating into improved performance and strength in the gym, that's when you probably got to pull back and maybe do a mini cut or maybe a full cut to to get the fat off and improve your insulin sensitivity again.
Do you think in order for the for a bulk to be more effective, do you think you should cut first before going into one?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Um oh, I had a follow-up question with that. Okay, yeah. So early in our friendship, when I knew you, I think you were a lot more, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were a lot more science-based, kind of more like
Mhm.
data driven or not data driven, like literature based, kind of based off of the scientific journals. And I think you've had a shift in your philosophy lately.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think the shift was for you? Because it typically goes the other way. Most people are like very bro scienced, and then they kind of go down the road of like scientific, evidence based, whatever that means. Why do you think you went the other direction?
Well, when I first started lifting, it was like I made the shift into science after when I first got into lifting, I was like more into the bro stuff, which I think we all are, right? Because like what
Yeah.
other direction is there to go when you start? Um, and then I guess I don't know, working with my coach and just because that's all I really had to lean on. Because for the first, what is it, 9 years basically of my fitness journey, I wouldn't even call it bodybuilding because it was very recreational at first. I didn't think I'd ever compete, or I wasn't sure I would at least.
Yeah, you were just focused on abs, which you looked great.
Yeah, so you're like self-coached, so um it's tough, right? Like you don't know how to when you're trying to self-coach yourself, it's difficult. There's a big psychological component to it. You're trying to do everything perfectly, but you're also fighting against your tendencies to want to, put stuff in your meal plan that's tasty and, abuse flexible dieting.
You make justifications.
Yeah, so yeah, basically, I guess I found comfort. I felt like I was doing things the right way if it was like backed by science.
Hmm.
So I relied on that too much, and I didn't really understand how the science worked, like how it's done, and like what kind of like weight it holds in terms of being like correct or incorrect or that kind of thing. So it was just basically uh, yeah, I felt like anything that was science based meant it was the right way. And
Hmm.
that's really all it kind of comes down to. And then the more I've been in the industry, the more I've realized that, science isn't the science-based stuff isn't all that it's chalked up to be, right? Like there's a lot of flaws to that too, if not more than some of the bro science stuff. But yeah, I think that's kind of what it comes down to. So I still think science is great, but I think, the the people who claim to be science-based, like the more they talk in absolutes around it, that's kind of the big issue with it because that's by definition not what science is, right? Science
Yeah.
should always be open to being proven wrong, right?
Yeah, of course. That right now on social media, it seems like a lot of the science-based guys are getting called out and they're kind of like the butt of the joke. And I have to say I'm enjoying it.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, like I think I think the science-based, evidence-based community as it was like 10 years ago is not the same as it is now. Um,
Yeah.
I think right now they're so heavily invested, like they treat like a new paper as gospel and they start talking about it on social media before they even know what they're talking about.
Yeah, Fuad did a really good podcast. He had a scientist. I forget what the correct term for him is, but he's literally a guy who studies muscle growth for a living as a
Mm,
scientist. And that was the whole point of the podcast was to discuss um, the landscape on social media with all the people who brand themselves as science-based and the flaws and like what he typically sees being said. And it's basically just at this point, it's just marketing. When someone calls themselves science-based or they post something and claim it's science-based, it's almost more misleading than someone who doesn't, or it is more misleading than people who, just speak based on kind of like what they know, their experience, anecdotes.
yeah.
And one example he used, and anyone watching this, and you as well, Braydon, I recommend you watch it. It's not a, he released it a couple weeks ago. One of the examples he used was um, when they measure the difference in muscle growth, like let's say a bicep, he said it was like, I forgot the exact number, but like a muscle fiber in your bicep is like 0.5 centimeters or something. So they'll do a study, and in one of the groups, they'll find zero point zero 0.01 more, zero point zero 0.01 centimeters more muscle growth than in the other. So that's like it's insignificant to the point where it's within the machine that they use to measure its margin of error. So
Mm.
there's no difference really. But then someone will, and he was referring to a specific post he said he saw. Someone took like because when you compare the numbers, it's like 50, it's like 20% more growth or something like that. But it's literally like within the machine's margin of error. So that's a specific post he saw where someone said uh, people who did bicep curls this way saw 20% more muscle growth or something when it's like literally they didn't at all.
Or it's like 20% on like the micron scale. It's like
Yeah.
it's like not even 20% sounds big, but like it's 20% of like microns.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult to kind of wrap your head around listening to that guy talk in that example, but it makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
just they're just
Yeah,
taking
if you have the link, I can put it in the description of this. Um, okay, cool. So you've obviously been in this world a long time. You originally were kind of in the more like aesthetics world. Now you're heavily in the bodybuilding world. I don't know if that's what you're, I don't know if that's what you're coaching, but like that you as yourself, that's what you're kind of pursuing. What are some of the big differences that you've seen in training for like just kind of like being lean and kind of like the more kino body style of things versus actually like going into bodybuilding? What are some of the big differences you've noticed?
uh well, I mean the differences is in my kind of focus, I guess. It really just comes down to intensity.
Mm,
That's kind of the main thing. Before I wasn't as focused or as aware of my training intensity. So like now I always try to train to failure basically on every set, which just ends up usually being on like at least one of the sets you do. Less volume, that's for sure, which I think comes with training more intensely.
yeah.
Um, I'm a lot more focused on choosing exercises where I have as much stability as possible. So
Mm,
like a chest supported row versus normal barbell row. Um, my program is probably 90% machines.
mm,
Um, yeah, overall, that's just being a lot more careful since because kind of like in a way the stakes are higher, right? Like I'm training to compete. I'm a lot more selective. I don't do as many things because I like to do them, although I love all my training. Um, I'm a lot more kind of careful and nuanced around how I select exercises and my training intensity. Um, Yeah, so before I would just do things because I enjoyed doing them or I liked looking at myself in the mirror when I did them. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's all stuff that I probably would have done too if I would have known better, but yeah, essentially like it just comes down to I take it more seriously
Mm.
instead of just
Yeah.
getting in there to work out and enjoy it, which is great, but um it makes it more enjoyable overall when you're getting results. So
Yeah. When you're actually working towards something.
yeah.
That's talking about using more stable exercises. That's something that I've had to really grapple with over the last year or so is kind of moving away. And you know this about my style of programming,
Mhm.
moving away from more of the barbell stuff. I
Mhm.
was heavily into like the barbell squat and the barbell deadlift, but I'm thinking I might be wrong, and like I'm gonna have to be okay with being wrong. That's why I'm really excited to be working with Cass. I'm going to be flying out to Colorado next month to be in one of his biomechanics seminar and kind of learn more.
Mhm.
But I think you're on the ball. I think if you can get more stable, you can focus more on force production,
Mhm.
which in turn leads to more mechanical tension, which in turn leads to more muscle growth. And that's something I've really had to like change my views on as of late. So cool, man.
But when you think of that though, like I think there's a ton of value in barbell stuff where you don't have
Yes.
stability for beginners.
Yes, absolutely. I still don't think that. I still think there is a foundational, and again, you're not going to see this in the literature. I do think that there is like a foundational level of strength and a basic understanding of large compound movements that must be earned before you can matriculate into more like isolated, stable exercises. I do think that if you can build a foundation on those movements, I think that's just going to set you up for success later. Um, as
Yeah,
far
because
as
it's really simple too, right? Like if you've never lifted and you're really weak and you do a swing squat instead of a barbell squat, uh, you're not the rest like the benefit of a more targeted machine like that where you're stable, you can get a huge range of motion and you can really isolate your quads on a squat pattern movement like that the benefit is you're isolating your quads way more. Um, so, but for a barbell squat, you're using your glutes, you have to brace your core. Your whole body, like your whole body is involved in a barbell squat or a deadlift, and that helps you build whole body strength a lot faster when you're a beginner, when you have the opportunity to get stronger throughout your entire body very quickly. So
yeah.
I think that's really what it comes down to is when you're a beginner, you want to take advantage of that and get your whole body super strong, and then you're going to benefit more from choosing more of the more stable exercises that are more targeted on machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I do think that there is a maybe some merit to the deadlift. My first show that I did 3 years ago, I didn't really place, but I talked to the judges afterwards, and they said I won from the back. My back was the thickest and
Mhm.
the most dense out of everybody else on the stage, and I'm a strong man. I'm a power lifter, and so like we deadlifted 3 or 4 days a week, and so I wonder if that movement of just heavy ass deadlifts and rack pulls and just ripping shit off the ground contributed to the thickness in my back.
100%. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
there was a time where I would disagree with you, but now no way. In fact, like my back is my weakest point, but not no longer thickness wise because I was doing deadlifts all off season.
Mm,
To the point where my coach was like he doesn't help me with my training um formally, but he wanted to look at it as I planned out my program
yeah.
for this rebound, and he was like he's like the thickness of your back isn't the problem, take the deadlifts out. For
Mm,
me it's width and lats,
yeah.
the big issue. So
That, and you won't get that. You're not going to get that through a deadlift. I think you're going to get that through
yeah.
focusing on the lower lats and the upper lats.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what's the next step for you, man? This is your second show. You freaking killed the second show. I know you're not happy with the placement, but what's the next step for you?
So we're doing a big push. So I'm doing my rebound, then an off season, and I was doing classic originally. So I had my first two close shows were in the classic division. this show, I'm gonna do open. So basically, for the next, who knows, 8 months to a year, maybe even a little longer. My goal is just to get as big as possible,
Mm,
because there's no weight caps in open. So yeah, it was interesting all off season. It started with one of my buddies, Pat, who's a pro. He went pro in men's physique. He just competed at the Toronto Pro and Classic. He was like, "Oh, damn, you look like I thought you were open." And I thought that was just like a compliment, like, "Oh, you look big." And
yeah.
a few other people kept saying that to me, and people who are in bodybuilding who actually have like, their opinion holds weight. And I kept brushing it off and thinking, oh, they're complimenting me, saying I look big, and it got to the point where even I had a conversation with my coach about it. It seems like my body is maybe just structured better for open. So,
Mm,
and then this show kind of made it clear, this prep as well. Like I was losing strength starting at about 8 weeks out, and the hunger and how much cardio I had to do to get down into my weight cap made it so. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I feel like I lost a lot of the upper body size
mm.
I gained in the off season. So
I was wondering about that because you said earlier that you felt like you were ready like 4 or 5 weeks out, but then you were just cutting just so that you could make weight.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I mean we were cutting to make weight from the start of prep too, right?
Yeah.
Because it's preps are all reverse engineered, right? So who knows? Like I think ideally, like I think it's normal for people who do a good prep to get stronger throughout the full course of it. It just matters like it just comes down to where you start and how you manage the prep throughout. But yeah, when you're trying to make a weight that really limits that, like you have to make weight. So if you start losing strength, you're starving. You have to just kind of ignore it until
Yeah. Just
until
to make the weight.
weight. Yeah.
I definitely think that you would probably flourish a lot more if you didn't have to worry about making an arbitrary weight number, but you just cut until you get to the level to the conditioning that you need.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So the hunger thing, do you think that you would be deploying like a GLP-1 or
we
like a
did.
snack? Oh, you did, and you still were suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still taking one now, retatrutide. Um, and I don't know, like I don't know if I'm just really hungry or if it doesn't work that well for me. But I did notice the effects of it. Like, you know how I don't know if you do this or not, but I think a lot of people in prep do this. Like, you'll leave your last two or three meals until the end of the day, so you can just have them all back to back to back.
So, yeah.
There was a couple points in time, and also I would like eat way more veggies than were on my plan too.
Yeah.
There was a point too where I was putting a ton of seasoning and spices on them, like with a ton of sodium. And it got to the point where those three meals, even though I'm eating like probably 1,200 calories, like my for about probably 6 weeks of the prep, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I don't know exactly. My meal plan was on rest days zero carbs, zero fat, just all protein and veggies. And then my training days was 40 grams of cream of rice pre-workout, 40 grams of cream of rice post-workout, and 100 grams of pineapple. But when I had
How,
those
how long
last,
how long out was that?
I think that started about 6, 7 weeks.
Wow.
And then luckily we were ready ahead of time. So we had like, I think 10, 12-ish days where we were adding more food back in. So that was
Yeah.
nice. But yeah, back to what I was saying. There was a few nights that where having those last three meals back to back with way too many veggies and all the seasoning, it felt like I had a 5,000 calorie cheat meal and I couldn't get off the couch and I was in a food coma to the point where like the first time it happened, it's like, shit, like, did I just gain like 10 pounds? And you
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
scale and you're like down in weight. Otherwise the food focus was definitely lower than in my first prep, but physically, like obviously the GLPs aren't going to eliminate every aspect of hunger, I think is
No.
what it comes down to. So yeah, we're playing with the dosing a bit too because like I said, my hunger is still pretty high. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we utilize those and the retatrutide. It sounds like they're great products because from what I've heard, like there's really no side effects. If anything, there's like side benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been kind of following along. Semaglutide was the first one that kind of like hit the market, and then there was tirzepatide, but I
Mhm.
think retatrutide is like probably the best one on the market right now.
Mhm.
In the States, though, the
It's not on the
cost
market though, is it?
research labs. I mean, you can get anything through research labs, but
Yeah, yeah.
it seems though that retatrutide, the cost versus like the same kind of like efficacious dose for semaglutide, it's like massive. It's the price of it is astronomical compared to like just semaglutide.
Oh, really?
Here in the States, I don't know how it is in Canada, but yeah, like so
Well, actually, but I used underground stuff all prep, and then this prep I did buy it off like a research chemical website, and it was more expensive.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know how much. I don't really care.
Yeah, you don't care. You just want the result. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get that.
for that kind of stuff, as long as it's not astronomical, like I'm just, okay, that's good. I'll do it.
I can move things around.
Especially if it's something my coach is telling me to put in my plan, I'm gonna figure out how to make it work. So
Yeah, yeah, that'll motivate you to make more sales, at least.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, man. Well, hey, I know you got to prep for your sales call, but dude, it was awesome chatting with you. It was super cool following along with your prep. It was awesome following along with your off season. I think right now I think I'm ready to step back in the arena and compete in October. I've
Sweet.
yeah, we'll see.
Were you
It's
working with what's his name, Chasm?
uh, Cass and I are working more on collaborative efforts. He's not my coach.
Okay,
Yeah, he was ever so gracious to let me come out to the biomechanics seminar in in July. But I'm gonna try this self-coached. I've
mm,
been working real close with Dr. Scott Stevenson. He doesn't coach; he just consults, so you can like pay him for a consult. But
that's cool.
his book, Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach, is a fantastic resource, and so I'm just kind of going off of that. Um,
Sweet.
I think if I get to 10 weeks out, if I'm still not quite there, I think I might have to get somebody, but we'll
Yeah,
see. I don't know.
yeah. Again, that's another thing that my opinion's kind of gone back and forth on. Like I've heard my coach before say, don't try to self coach. But now he has a new podcast co-host who self coaches and does really well with it.
There are some people that completely thrive on that.
Yeah.
Um, I
And
think
then
if you,
the guy who won the overall at the show I just competed at, he's actually a friend of mine too. He self-coached himself too, and he won the overall. So
I think the key to that is you have to be extremely level-headed. You cannot be emotional in your decisions whatsoever.
yeah,
Um,
I don't
but
think I could. I don't think I could get away with it. Not at this point, at least.
yeah,
Um,
that surprises me. You come off a very pragmatic, and so that surprises me. Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you can self-coach?
I mean, I think I could. It would take. I would have to like take some time to like get my head right for it because at this point right now with my coach, like I said earlier, he doesn't even show me in my meal plan how many calories and macros everything adds up to. And I'm just leaning into that. Like my mindset
Yeah.
right now is for my bodybuilding, it's outsourced to him. So
Mm,
he tells me what to do, I do it. We do talk about stuff and have conversations about things and I ask him things like, hey, what do you think if we do this or this? But I try to keep my distance kind of thing, so it's something I just don't have to worry about, and I can just focus on being a good athlete when it comes to my bodybuilding. So,
yeah.
because
Just
yeah, like
outsource and delegate.
yeah, because when it comes down to it, it's time consuming and consuming mentally, right? Just
Yeah, it takes up resources
yeah, yeah.
for
So
sure.
so yeah, that's the way I've been kind of leaning into it for the last year or so, and yeah, I think I'm happy with that for now. I don't think I'll be trying to self coach anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, if it works, don't change it.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, I think the reason why I want to try self-coaching is I had a previous coach 3 years ago and it went okay. I'm glad I experienced it, but I had a lot of I think it could have gone better. And I think maybe my reservation is I just need to find the right coach.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I got
so
I got really lucky and kind of nailed it on I guess the second try, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to it. Like there's a whole relationship aspect to it. I think um I forget what I was listening to some guys, pro bodybuilders, talk about it on a different podcast, but yeah, it was like, yeah, I think it was Ian Valere, because obviously pro bodybuilders, they've all had experiences with multiple different coaches, and it's
Mm,
good to work with a coach who I think kind of has like, they have some level of authority over you where, in a way, like my coach, it almost seems like he's like a dad, right? Like I'm not gonna question him. He has like a level of authority over me. We do have like friendly conversations where we talk about off-topic things, but there's a very, very hard line,
mm.
right? And yeah, so I think that's important. A lot of people, they don't do well working with people that they get too friendly with. Um, and yeah, because yeah, there needs to be that level of authority where like they tell you what to do and you do it, right?
And I think it takes humility on the client side as well to trust whatever the coach says. And I personally, I won't deny, I think I have a humility problem. Uh, I have a hard time trusting other people.
Yeah, there's things that my coach will tell me to do that I'm like, I don't think this is right. I disagree with it.
Yeah.
And there has been a few times where we have like maybe two or three times where we've had like kind of arguments about it. And then each time I realize that, and it's usually because I heard something somewhere else.
Mm,
Someone say that the specific thing, just by chance, I hear someone say, this is the wrong thing to do. And then that's what my coach has me doing. So I I bring that to him and he disagrees with what I heard. And usually what ends up happening is I discover it's completely subjective. Some people like doing it that way, some people like doing it this way. And then a lot of times my coach ends up flipping on it and we try the other way. So it's not a matter of there was a right and a wrong way. It's a matter of like you can try either way and
mm.
either way might work. So
Yeah.
and that's what good coaching comes down to, right? Is like you don't know how things are going to work. You got to kind of try things out, see how they work, and if they don't work, then you pivot.
Yeah. Love that. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So, pleasure speaking with you as always, man. It's been too long. So,
Yeah, it
uh,
definitely has. Yeah, it was
yeah.
great. We should hopefully we'll do it again another time.
Cool, man. Well, hey, go kill that call.
Yeah, thanks, man. Talk to you
Okay,
later.
see you, bud.